So today,
So happy to see us.
you
So all together, yes.
you have organized this event and you have requested me. So since the first time I visited Taiwan, I have felt, I've been feeling Taiwan and Taiwanese very close to my mind. And many of the friends are my good friends. Old-time friends, I think it means. So to visit different places, of course, I have to depend on many circumstances, but in my mind, everyone in Taiwan, young and old, are in my mind all the time. And today, we are meeting online, and I have and I'll be giving teaching on the 8 verses of mind training by Langri Thangpa, Geshe Langri Thangpa. And this text is a short text on the training of mind for the altruistic spirit of enlightenment. Basically, this text called the 8 verses on training the mind has its source or is based on the Master Nagarjuna's Ratnavali, in which there are towards the end of the text there are 20 verses. Where it says that it's just like the elements, like earth and so forth, may I become a sustenance or enjoyment for limitless sentient beings and so forth. And as long as even a few sentient beings remain without reaching enlightenment, may I remain until then. For their sake, even after my enlightenment. So these Master Nagarjuna's Ratnavali, or the precious garland, has these verses, and these are the basis for the 8 verses of mind training. And in Tibet, after Master Atisha Dipankarashijana came to Tibet, the teachings on training the mind were brought then. Before that, Master Shantarakshita, who was a top scholar of Nalanda Monastic University at that time and was a follower of Master Nagarjuna, so he came, and then afterwards Master Atisha came to Tibet, and the followers of Master Atisha were known as Kadampas, which means taking even a single letter of the scriptures into the practice and path. And so Master Langri Thangpa, whose real name was Dorje Singye, was someone who practiced bodhicitta all the time. And so, because of his practice of bodhicitta all the time, he was also said to cry all the time because of thinking of the suffering of sentient beings. And he was therefore, because of his crying all the time, he was known as the Langri Thangpa, who had a very stern, a sad face and always crying. And so today I will give you the explanatory transmission of this text, the 8 verses on training the mind. Regarding bodhicitta, for the last 50 years or so, based mainly on Bodhisattvacharya Avatara, I have been reflecting on bodhicitta all the time, but I never remain maintain a serious face like Langri Thangpa himself. Because in the Bodhisattvacharya Avatara itself, it is mentioned that you should invite sentient beings with smile. And so, because of that, unlike Langri Thangpa, who had a serious demeanor, I practice bodhicitta all the time and also recite this text on a daily basis, these 8 verses. So, of course, I am a follower of Langri Thangpa himself, yet I always smile and laugh. So this is based on, I have a source for being having this kind of a jolly face in Bodhisattvacharya Avatara. So wherever you look at, all sentient beings are, I consider them as my friends and have affection and compassion towards them, and on top of that, it is coupled with the understanding of the view of emptiness, and therefore this gives me peace of mind. In the in Madhyamaka Avatara by Chandrakirti,
다동 공부를 도배 3년 이미지 조금에 벌어 인상 깨버시 대공 대시 숨기 산제 정신이 멀리 보노로 파버시 왕이스 엔티슈데 그즈드니 소양가고 대교고 망배게고
at the end of the 6th chapter,
계획연대 자주 파를 초동로서 뭐네 진짜 사무실당에 되잖아요.
it is mentioned that the bodhisattvas use the 2 wings of understanding of the emptiness and bodhicitta. Fly, the swans, the kings of swans of the bodhisattvas fly to the other shore of the ocean, of the qualities of Buddhahood. And so, because of this practice of bodhicitta, as it is said in the Bodhisattvacharya Avatara 3rd chapter, today in front of the protectors of all beings, I invite all sentient beings to their state of Sugatahood, and in the meantime to the temporary happiness. And therefore, gods, demigods, and others should be joyful. And therefore, so because of the practice of bodhicitta, I always remain peaceful in my mind. So in front of today, in front of all the protectors, I invite all beings to the state of Sugatahood, the Buddhahood, and in the meantime to the temporary happiness. Therefore, gods and demigods be joyous. And so I wonder, when I think about the tantric deities having very fierce look, whom do they actually show their wrath? And so, this text on the 8 verses is
다
a text for the practice of bodhicitta.
다 랑다 세계 되기 아니 고대이디
And so to
一开始
the beginning of the text, the first 7 verses show the bodhicitta, practice of bodhicitta, and then the last verse where it says, may all these remain undefiled by the stains of 8 mundane concerns, and so forth, shows the practice of the view of emptiness.
受到了一个
And so the first verse,
发用，请你们
I, for the benefit of sentient beings, all sentient beings,
其实都会有
when you think about, when you come across this word I, you should think who you are, where am I, what am I? So when I get up in the morning, I reflect on this verse from Mula Madhyamaka Karika, where it says, not the aggregates, it is not the aggregate, nor separate from it, it is not in the aggregates, nor the aggregates are in it, it does not possess, the Tathagata does not possess the aggregates, what else is Tathagata? And so I switch the Tathagata with I. So not one, not different from the aggregates, not in the aggregate, and not I'm not in the aggregate, and who am I? So every day when I wake up, I do reflect on this verse and try to search for this I. So you cannot, when you try to search for the identity of the I, you cannot find anything that you can point your finger at. And so, as it is said in the Madhyamaka Avatara, when you try to search for the self in these 7 different ways, in the sevenfold, through the sevenfold reasoning, you cannot find anything that you can pinpoint as being the I or the self. But the I does exist, the self does exist by way of the designation. So here, why do we do this kind of analysis is because we have, we create or develop this inappropriate mentation, thinking of an independent I, and on the basis of that inappropriate attention or thinking, then the destructive emotions such as attachment, anger, and so forth arise. As Master Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamaka Karika says, the attachment, anger, and confusion arise from this kind of inappropriate thinking. And the inappropriate thinking also arises because of the fundamental ignorance about which holds on to some kind of independent existence in this. And also Master Nagarjuna's same text says that the karma and delusions arise from this kind of conceptions, and they in turn arise from the fabrication, and that is ended by emptiness. So when you think of yourselves as yourself, I am this, I am Chinese, I'm Taiwanese, I'm Tibetan. I mean, of course, when you try to search for that I that you think of as if it is it is governing or ruling over your body and mind. Where is it? I'm talking to you now. Where is that I that you think of as the listener or to my speech? Of course, it is not the case that the I or the self, yourself, does not exist. But what you have to understand is that when you have a sense of an I, there is this sense of an I which is independent, concrete, independent from the body and the mind. That kind of I or self does not exist. And so, because of this notion of an I which is independently existing, we have an inappropriate mentation. And because of that kind of a solid, independent existence of an I, you have the inappropriate mentation, and that in turn gives rise to attachment, anger. And so the notion of an independent I is the basis for our negative emotions, these mental afflictions. And so if you are able to reduce that clinging to the I, then it will help to reduce your anger, attachment, and so forth. And consequently, it will reduce the problems that we create in the world. So when you look for the I, search whether this I exists or not, and you have to be able to come to the conclusion that this independently existing I is not there. And therefore, in Buddhism, it is considered very important to use logic and reasoning to delve into the nature of things. So in the Pali tradition, of course, they mainly use scriptural quotations, whereas in the Nalanda tradition, the Sanskrit tradition, which we as Tibetans and use the people of Taiwan and the Chinese ethnicity also follow this tradition. So we all are follower of the Nalanda tradition, and particularly the follower of Master Nagarjuna, the great glorious master. So we call him Longsu Pusa. So as followers of Master Nagarjuna, regarding the profound path, stages of the path, which is based on the ultimate reality, we have the texts such as Mula Madhyamaka Karika and Madhyamaka Avatara by Master Chandrakirti. And so these two texts, Mula Madhyamaka Karika by Master Nagarjuna and Madhyamaka Avatara by Chandrakirti, are the two main, the supreme texts for understanding of emptiness, the ultimate reality. And I always keep these two texts on my desk, on my table. And so that is with regards to pertaining to the profound path which is for attaining the wisdom dharmakaya at the Buddha stage, when you reach the Buddha stage of Buddhahood. And so with regard to the view of emptiness, through this understanding of emptiness, you'll be able to understand that the delusions that are within us can be ended. As it is said in Mahayana Uttara Tantra, that all of us have the Buddha nature. So when you think along these lines of Madhyamaka text, then you'll be able to find that it is possible that I can overcome and the mental afflictions completely. As it is said, these are adventitious. And the quality of clarity and cognitive nature of the mind is naturally within us in the mind. Though the self does exist, and everyone who has a sense of an I or self, they are same in not wanting suffering, but wanting happiness. And suffering and happiness have to do with mental states. And so it is mainly, it has mainly to do with these happiness and suffering, have mainly to do with our mind. And with regard to happiness, the mental happiness is the most significant. And so the followers of Master Nagarjuna and Nalanda tradition must know that it's most important to transform our mind. So the root of our happiness is in the mind itself. So today, the world is mainly attracted towards external development, but except for the Indian traditions, which is the only tradition where we use the mind to attain happiness, whereas other traditions mainly are based on praying to a creator God. And so by transforming our mind and seeking happiness through the transformation of our mind exists only in the Indian tradition, where there is a teaching of non-violence, not harming, which is based on karuna or compassion, great compassion or compassion. And so for these have existed in India for the last at least 3,000 years. And Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha, also practiced these Indian traditions. And after attaining enlightenment, from his own experience, he taught the view of selflessness. And he mainly emphasized reason and logic and not just scriptural citations. As he said, monks and learned ones, just as gold is tested by burning, cutting and rubbing, likewise you should examine carefully or thoroughly examine my teaching and my words, and then accept it, not because you have devotion to me. And so the Buddha himself has stated or told us that we should check his teaching, and then through our examination, when we find some teaching true and then also beneficial to our mind, when we practice them, then you should practice it. In Tibetan, we have 100 volumes of the translated words of the Buddha and over 200 volumes of the translated exegesis of the Indian commentaries. And so all these emphasize using logic and reason to make transformation within our mind. So, with regard to that, if we actually examine how these negative emotions arise in us, what are they? I mean, you'll be able to see that they do not have any sound basis, whereas compassion and bodhicitta and so forth have the logical basis. And they can be increased through and developed further and further through our practice. So the strong attachment and anger and so forth do feel very strong, but when you try to look for their root, you'll not be able to find them having any sound basis. And therefore, these negative emotions and ignorance arise through confusion Whereas they may be very strong because of our habituation with them over countless lifetimes, and they do not have any sound basis and logic to prove their truth as such. Whereas compassion and a view of emptiness and so forth have a sound logical basis, and therefore you can develop them further and further through practice. And so when we talk about practicing the Dharma, it's not just, it should not just remain at the level of prayers, as you Chinese people do say Amitabha, pray to Amitabha and so forth. But as human beings, since we have this kind of a unique brain and unique intelligence with which we can actually examine what is right and wrong, and through the help of this intelligence, we should be able to pierce through the negative emotions. And so with the determination to achieve the highest aim for the benefit of all sentient beings, which surpasses even the wish-fulfilling gem, may I hold them dear at all times. So all sentient beings are the sentient beings of the three realms of existence who do not want suffering but want happiness, and we also have the connection over many lifetimes with these all sentient beings in the universe. And so we do consider compassion and bodhicitta very precious, but how do they arise in us? They arise in relation to sentient beings who are suffering. So, with the sentient beings as our focus, since there are these sentient beings who are suffering, therefore compassion can arise in us and also can be developed infinitely. So, the highest aim, to achieve the highest aim, with the determination to achieve the highest aim means highest aim is the attainment of the four Buddha bodies. Based on these sentient beings, and with coupled with that of the view of emptiness, we attain that the four Buddha bodies, and therefore you say, "May I hold dear at all times." And then the second verse, as it is said in the Ratnavali, the precious garland, where I quoted certain lines, and one of them says, "May I be able to, may all the sufferings of all sentient beings fructify upon me, and may all the happiness and good things of myself fructify upon all sentient beings." And so what we are thinking is helping sentient beings. And so in order for, even when we do business, for example, we use some money, and in order to, by using that capital money, we think of making profit. Whereas the negative and the sentient negative emotions, the afflictive emotions, do not help us. It only helps to increase that of the selfish attitude. This extreme self-centered attitude only helps us grow these negative emotions within ourselves. Whereas, and because of that, we are always bound by more problems. Whereas when we think about sentient beings, other sentient beings, and even your suffering becomes small. Whenever I interact with someone, may I view myself as the lowest amongst all, and from the very depths of my heart respectfully hold others as superior. In all my deeds, may I probe into my mind, and as soon as mental and emotional afflictions arise, as they endanger myself and others, may I strongly confront them and avert them. So this is about overcoming our pride and arrogance, because that gives rise to more problems. Whereas if you hold yourself lowly, it helps. You respect others. And then verse number 4. So because we are so habituated with our negative, destructive emotions, even a small catalyst can give rise to a big destructive emotion within us. And so what you should understand is that these destructive emotions always ruin us. And in our day-to-day life, even in dreams, we should be able to check within ourselves whether these destructive emotions arise in us or not. And so these negative emotions arise, the problems are caused by our self-cherishing attitude and also holding on to some kind of a true independent existence in things. And because of that, if we familiarize ourselves with the positive attitudes, in all my deeds may I probe in my mind, and as soon as mental and emotional afflictions arise, as they endanger myself and others, may I strongly confront them and avert them. And so, if you familiarize yourself with these, your mind, you'll be able to reduce these negative emotions. Of course, in Tantra, there is the practice of taking the attachment into path, and also anger into path, and so forth. But for that, you have to understand the general structure of the teaching of the Buddha, the common teachings. And so, through the tantric practice, we should be able to use our essential drops and use the wind and channels within ourselves. So we should be able to transform them. And so, through this knowledge and experience, then you'll be able to see the significance of the tantric practices, where it is said that you use the attachment, anger, and enjoyments into the path, transforming them into the path. Otherwise, without understanding how you can do that. I mean, you may misuse the Tantra. So in tantric texts and rituals, in one of Sakya Master's writings, in his prayer to Mahakala shell, so he says that in order to crush one's enemies and take care of those who are on our side, so and so forth. So I don't favor this kind of a praise to crush those of our enemies and taking care of those who are near and dear ones. So because we are so used to doing this in our life, it is even extended to the Dharma protectors. So I don't really like this kind of a praise to Dharma protector. So when you have a very strong and powerful practice of controlling your wind energies and channels and the vital drops, then you'll be able to see the the significance of these tantric practices. So without knowing the significance of tantra, you will actually use the tantra for ruinous purposes. When I see beings of unpleasant characters and so forth, so generally you should see sentient beings as pleasant, attractive, and have compassion and love towards them, but should not be tossed by. But you should not be tossed by your attachment and anger and so forth. And so when the sentient beings are tossed by these negative emotions, you should feel more compassionate and loving towards them. And when others, out of jealousy, treat me wrongly with abuse, slander, and scorn, may I take upon myself the defeat and offer to others the victory. So to all the mother sentient beings who are as infinite as the space, you should have compassion towards them even when they provoke anger and so forth within yourself. And so you should use that opportunity to increase your experience of compassion, love, and bodhicitta. And in the Bodhisattva Charya Avatara, it is said that the enemy is your teacher of patience. So in order to practice compassion well, to be successful in the compassionate practice of compassion, you should have patience. In order to have patience, you should you would be able to practice patience when there are those who provoke you anger, who actually talk behind us. And therefore, practice comes because there are those who we consider as enemies, who always think of doing something bad to us, talking behind us, and so forth, backbiting and so forth. And particularly when someone whom I have helped or in whom I have placed great hope mistreats me in extremely hurtful ways, may I regard him still as my precious teacher. So those to whom you have helped, actually, ideally, they should be actually the ones who should repay your kindness. But when they do something bad to us, of course, if we actually talk about a legal system, when you have done something good to somebody and then the person actually responds with negative attitudes and negative things instead of gratitude, I mean, you have some reason to prosecute them as or something like that. And whereas here you are saying that you regard him still as a precious teacher. And so whatever virtues you have collected, you should dedicate them for the benefit of all sentient beings, and particularly those who are close to us, the humans. And then in brief, may I offer benefit and joy to all my mothers, both directly and indirectly. May I quietly take upon myself all hurts and pains of my mothers. And then verse number 8, may all these remain undefiled by the stains of the 8 mundane concerns, and may I, recognizing all things as illusion-like. So whether it's internal experience of pain and pleasure or the external objects, all of them appear as if they have some kind of objective existence, independent objective existence.
quantum
The
physics.
quantum physics concept of quantum physics is quite helpful, where they differentiate between appearance and reality. Apparent things appear as if they have some objective existence. Our near and dear ones and the adversaries and enemies and so forth do appear to us as if they have some objective independent existence, but if you actually search for their identity, whether they exist that way or not, you will not be able to find that. So because the so-called enemies and our near and dear ones appear as if they have some kind of objective independent existence, we grow anger or attachment towards them. Whereas if you go beyond that appearance and try to look for their existence, you will not be able to find anything being this and that. So the mental afflictions, the destructive emotions, arise on the basis of the appearance. It is very clear, though there is such an appearance of beings and things and so forth as if they have some objective existence, yet if you try to analyze them, for example, the beings into their body and the mind, and then further into their parts and so forth, you have nothing that you can pinpoint as being this and that person and so forth. And therefore, on the basis of appearance, we grow attachment or anger and hatred. So this is clear. Some friends of mine have come to notice that some quantum physicists have said that when you understand quantum physics and when you feel convinced about what quantum physics says, that there is no objective existence, it helps to reduce your destructive emotions. And so what Buddhism says is that the negative, destructive emotions arise on the basis of appearance, with the notion that the things have some kind of a solid, concrete, and independent existence in and of themselves. And because of that, the negative emotions arise. Whereas in the Madhyamaka texts, particularly like Mula Madhyamaka Karika, as I quoted the lines, nothing exists objectively. So when you are able to feel convinced that things do not exist the way they appear to me, and that helps to reduce that clinging to some kind of a solidity and independent existence in things. And therefore, things do not exist the way they appear to us, and therefore they are like illusions. And may I, recognizing all things as illusion devoid of clinging, be released from bondage. And so the bondage is this, the clinging and the grasping at some kind of a concrete, solid existence, independent existence in things. And therefore, and devoid of that clinging, may I be released from the bondage. So for the bodhicitta, the conventional bodhicitta practice of it, Master Shantideva's Bodhisattva-charya Avatara is the best text. And for the ultimate bodhicitta, which is the middle way view, Master Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamaka Karika, the fundamental treatise of the middle way, and Master Chandrakirti's Madhyamaka Avatara, entering the middle way, and its auto-commentary are really great texts. And when you read these texts and reflect on their meaning, you even wonder, how do these appearance, on the basis of appearance, this kind of a clinging to some kind of an independent objective existence happen to me? And so, pay more attention to Bodhisattva Charyavatara by Shantideva and read it more. It's really marvelous text for practice of bodhicitta, particularly equaling and exchanging self and others. And in the 8th chapter, it teaches, and then the 6th chapter on patience. So you should study these two texts more often. So it'll help you. When I was in Tibet, I had felt that bodhicitta, of course, is great, but it's very difficult to practice. But after receiving teaching on Bodhisattva Charyavatara, then I can say that I have some kind of an experience which comes when I put some effort in it. And so this happens to me. I cannot say I have this effortless experience of bodhicitta yet. And then for the ultimate bodhicitta, the view of emptiness, Master Chandrakirti's Madhyamaka Avatara and Mula Madhyamaka Karika, so these reasonings that Master Chandrakirti uses are very powerful, where he says that if things were to have some kind of a stable inherent existence, then the Arya beings, wisdom, which is the equipoise on that of the ultimate nature of things, would be destroyer of entities and so forth. And so these are very powerful reasons you should think, reflect on. So tomorrow is my birthday. I have said that the best gift you can give to me on my birthday would be if you could recite Om Mani Padme Hum mantra, the 6-syllable mantra of Avalokiteshvara. So while you may recite this mantra from your mouth, but if your mind is distracted somewhere else, it would be like, just repeating money, 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 the English word, money, money, money. So in this mantra, Om is the beginning of the mantra. It's made up of 3 letters, A, U, and Ma, which represents our body, speech, and mind. And on the basis of these 3, body, speech, and mind, there is a self or an I. So at this stage, our body, speech, and mind are more or less used for, are influenced by, under the strong influence of destructive emotions, whereas through familiarization with the path, what will happen is these impure body, speech, and mind that we have as sentient beings, and which mainly the mind, so that they will be purified and you reach that of the mind of a Buddha, and you become a Buddha, Arya being. So on the basis of the pure body, speech, and mind, there is the Buddha, which is designated. And on the basis of impure body, speech, and mind, we have sentient beings. And so how do you transform these impure body, speech, and mind into pure body, speech, and mind at the resultant stage of Buddhahood? And so how does that process happen is mentioned through the money, and which represents that of the Bodhichitta. And Padma is lotus, which is wisdom, symbolizes the wisdom. And Hung means combining these two, Bodhichitta and the view of emptiness. So Hung represents or symbolizes this union of the Bodhichitta and wisdom of emptiness. And so, on my birthday tomorrow, 1,000, saying 1,000 times this mantra 1,000 times is easy, isn't it? And so you should recite 1,000 at least 1,000 times each. So if each person could recite 1,000, 10 persons would make it 10,000, and then that would also multiply with more number of beings, 100,000 and million and so forth. And so, if you could recite this mantra, I mean, of course, you would be able to create some virtues within yourself. And so, you would be practicing bodhicitta, and as a practitioner of bodhicitta, you who practice the bodhicitta and the view of emptiness, and teach others as well. So through the merit that you gain through the recitation of the six-syllable mantra, if you could dedicate it for my long life, of course, it would be helpful for me to remain, if you could dedicate it for me to live 110 years, till 110 years, and it would be good for everyone. So as the political scenario changes, I may be able to visit Taiwan. I hope for that, but it's difficult to say this at this point of time. But whether I physically am able to come there or not, my mind, spirit, in my spirit, I am with you. So please stay healthy.
Thank you, Your Holiness. Thank
Be
you
at
so much
ease.
for the precious teachings,
Thank you.
which have been heard just now by 1,000 participants here, plus 300 volunteers. Well, due to COVID-19, so we cannot fill the hall, and then we are all wearing masks, except for the two MCs, yeah?
Oh,
And, you know,
okay.
you can see people, yes, you can see people also keeping very safe social distance.
Okay.
We're so blessed to have you here with us. Thank you so much. And we would like to also invite Jamyang Renqin, our translator, because without him, our ears will be deaf to your teachings. So our translator, Jamyang Renqin 老师，我们要非常谢谢我们刚刚我们的讲老师刚刚为我们做了非常精湛的翻译，非常谢谢。Thank you, 对不起，谢谢。So, Your Holiness, we need you to stay with us. Okay, please stay with us. We would like to move on to our ambulance donation ceremony. This is the 6th ambulance we're donating.
Thank you.
我们要向尊者报告，在今年我们台湾的4众弟子再次集资，以尊者的名义购买第6辆 顶级型的救护车达赖喇嘛观音6号，在今天我们要捐赠给台北市政府消防局救护团队。
谢谢。
So this is the ambulance, Dalai Lama Avalokiteshvara number 6 ambulance. Your
Thank you.
Holiness.
Thank you. Oh yeah.
我们接下来呢就要来进行今天的捐赠仪式，我们要邀请我们的贵宾来到舞台上。首先邀请指导单位达赖喇嘛西藏宗教基金会董事长达瓦才仁先生，我们欢迎。
We're inviting our guests to come onto the stage.
以及主办单位台北市甘丹东顶显密佛学研修协会理事长侯胜善先生，欢迎。以及受赠代表台北市政府消防局副局长许志敏副局长，欢迎。我们紧接着就要来进行我们今天的捐赠仪式。那我们的董事长以及我们的理事长将会代表我们的法王捐赠救护车给予我们台北市政府消防局。
Thank you.